It's time to get sexy on Secular Sexuality.
Hello and welcome to Secular Sexuality. My name is Megan Bonner and joining me as always is Christy Powell.
Howdy.
And joining us today is Lex Keaton. Hello, Lex, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So today we were going to talk to you about sex and relationships for those with disabilities.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your experience or where you fit in all of this?
Absolutely. So I was born with osteogenesis imperfecta, which, to break it down for you, is a brittle bone disease. So I grew up mostly in and out of a wheelchair or with some kind of walking assistance. I had leg braces for a lot of grade school, broken my bones a couple hundred times, 30 to 40 surgeries, couple blood transfusions, a lot of my parts of my body have rods or screws in it. So I've definitely been under the knife a couple times. But as of today, I can walk without assistance. It's actually been probably 5 or so years since I've broken my last bone, so I've been doing really well. My adulthood has not been nearly as bad as my childhood as far as fractures go. I was a part of a research program in St. Louis with Shriners Hospital. I took Fosamax for about 4 years. Started every single day for the first year, then went to weekly and then monthly until I was taken off of it because it started to square my bones out a little bit. So long story short, to kind of wrap that up, is even though I stopped taking Fosamax and it ended up kind of squaring the bones off a little bit, it also strengthened my bones. And so that's why I'm able to walk without assistance, and just my quality of life is improved since then.
Awesome.
Yeah, just kind of put you as far as like what has happened, where I'm at now, and then also, you know, we can also continue to talk about like what my future holds and all of that stuff. So
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's super exciting. And also congratulations for going so long without having an injury.
Yeah.
That's pretty, I mean, I imagine that's pretty good for someone with your condition.
absolutely. I mean, my brittle bone disease has mostly affected my legs and my lower back, but so it was a lot of wheelchairs and the walking assistance. But yeah, I mean, I actually commute by bicycle to work from time to time. But, you know, that's kind of goes into the whole saying of like the more you keep moving, the healthier you are, the better your body feels, kind of stuff like that. But yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, it seems like the medical intervention is a big part of it, but I have to imagine there's a lot of lifestyle stuff that goes into that as well, you know, keeping up that streak, as it were.
Absolutely. And as far as how that kind of intertwines into your day-to-day life, but also your relationships, I was actually talking to my partner earlier how I kind of dawned on me that I'm almost at that point in my life where I've been walking without assistance for almost as long as I had to use assistance.
Oh, wow.
So I'll be 28 this month, so I'll be like 30, 31 when it's kind of like
Hit that
50,
tipping
50,
point.
you know. And
Happy early birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, and when you realize things like that, you also kind of reflect on how your relationships have changed. You know, just because people do view people differently, that, you know, people with all kinds of different disabilities, if you're in a wheelchair or any form of walking assistance, or even if your disability is kind of invisible, your relationships change based on what information they have and what you're comfortable, but you can also use that for anything, any subject, really.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, and before we dive too much deeper, I was just going to hit community corkboard real quick.
Yeah.
Really, the only thing we have on the slate right now is we will be at AACon 2019. That will be April 19th through the 21st in Cincinnati, Ohio. So come out. We're going to have 2 live shows. We'll be airing live Atheist Experience and live Talk Heathen from the convention. It'll be amazing. So come out and join us. And with that, let's go ahead and get back into the conversation. I do want to shout out to the audience, though, to remind them that we do have lines open. So if you would like to call with your questions or your own personal comments and suggestions, please, 512-686-0279. You can also go to the Atheist Experience webpage and click the Call the Show button. And we're back. Christy, did you have a question for Lex?
Yeah, well, just, that communication piece. I mean, we're always encouraging people, of course, to recognize that whoever they are, that they're unique and that their wants and desires and their reasons for having a relationship and what that relationship looks like is unique to them. So people should go in without expectations and with good communication. But I have to imagine that there are so many assumptions that people just generalize when they're meeting a new partner, when they are, forming these relationships that don't apply to you. So I guess I'm wondering what it's like to have to roll that out a little bit and have to have those conversations about who you are and what you'd be interested in or able to do in a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as we get older, the more people we date or have any kind of relationships with, communication's a huge part of it.
Sure.
When I was dating and using online apps or dating websites, you kind of have this moment where you're like, how much do I reveal to them?
Mm-hmm.
What do I put on, my profile that's like, do I put bullet points? Do I put that I'm disabled, or do I put the actual like osteogenesis imperfecta, the whole thing out there and have them Google it?
Like which date do I come out with all of this on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was something that it took probably a couple years to navigate. I mean, going back all the way, even in, kindergarten, my first boyfriend. I was in a wheelchair in kindergarten, but we were also like, our parents were friends, it was the whole childhood friend thing. But as you get older and you're not growing up with these people, then like having you in a wheelchair or even 4'6", which is as tall as I am, that's shorter than average. Those adjustments definitely require conversations, especially those that aren't as visible. Definitely depends on where the person, like for me, for example, like I didn't feel comfortable right away. And especially when I moved to Austin, I was primarily focused on like making sure people knew I was queer. Like I was ready to be like out and about. I got my short haircut. Look at me. I'm not dating men anymore. That whole thing. It definitely took me probably a couple of years to kind of realize like, okay, being queer is like the same as being disabled as far as like, I'm not just that. I'm not just queer.
It's
I'm not just
integral to your identity, but it doesn't make up your entire identity.
It is a facet of the whole that is you. But like you were saying, when you came to Austin, you suddenly had this new part of yourself that you were able to just be out and there. And so that kind of took over some of the beginning conversations that you had, like, no, this is the really important part. That's what
I was focused on.
Yeah,
and then it kind of shifted. I was riding my bike and got hit by a car, and then a part of like my entire left side was broken, and people kind of then learned like, oh, you have this brittle bone disease. I hadn't quite I knew something was different, but I didn't know what it was. I had realized there were like 20 people that I see on a regular basis, like had no idea like what my disability was. And that's eye-opening because you're like, wait, that's a huge component of who I am, and also, you know, just as important to me as my queerness or.
And you're suddenly faced with like, wait, how did this not come up?
Yes, and I'm kind of searching like, oh wait, I have to figure out how to incorporate this into conversation, because when I do wear shorts, like I have scars, I even have like pieces of muscle missing. Like it's a noticeable difference. I've still, like, within the past year has had someone walk up to me, oh my gosh, what happened to your legs? Which it's been happening for a while. I can let that roll off, but it is still a little jarring.
It's such a weird dichotomy of like, you know, knowing people that don't know this huge part of your identity, and then having strangers feel very comfortable just walking right into it and
being like, so what's up?
Yeah, trying to find the sweet spot of like how to unpack and roll these things out.
Yeah, absolutely. And figuring out when the right time is, how to do it, is really challenging because people are different. Sometimes you'll tell people and they're just like, cool, where are we going to eat?
Yeah.
You know, or I've had people even be like, oh, I didn't even notice. And I'm like, I'm a foot and a half shorter than you. You didn't question anything, or
didn't seem
not that like
significant.
shortness like equals like a disability, but like my body is disproportionate in as far as like length goes. So it's you know, I have had enough people raise an eyebrow or tilt their head at me to where I'm like, I know it's not something that's completely invisible.
Sure.
And so I think it's also can be relatable where you're like, no, I want people to know that I have a disability. This is something, kind of going back to like, this is something that's a part of me. Don't overlook it. Because if you overlook it, that's when you bump into me and I might break something, or like I trip and like you bump into me and cause me to fall. Like my friends and the people around me do have to be aware. So kind of going back to what does that conversation look like? It depends on the situation. You know, it depends on if I'm in a professional situation, if this is like a sexual partner, if this is just someone that I know I'm going to be like lifelong friends with, even partners, parents, family, you know, that whole other side of like meeting their family, having to explain to them like, no, I was born this way and I'm forever gonna be this way. There's no cure.
Like,
those must be fun conversations.
It's fine. Like I'm managing, but thanks for noticing. And yeah.
I mean, there's no like one right way and there's no wrong way. I think if anything, I've always just kind of used my best judgment in the moment to try to fill out like the conversation. Just like, oh, is this a good time to bring it up? Like, I've seen they've looked at my legs a couple times now. I you know, I can
Maybe it's
I'll
worth
address
mentioning.
like they're obviously not gonna ask.
Sure.
Which is also another awkward kind of situation because you're like, no, guys, really, I can tell that you noticed this thing. Just out with it, would you?
And you know, we could all learn from children.
I was gonna bring that up. Like that strikes me as that opening.
Oh, I could tell you like stories where I've been at Bed Bath & Beyond checking out and some kids behind me are like, Mom, what's wrong with that person? And the mom's like, oh my
mortified,
gosh,
sure.
yeah.
Like, shh, don't say that.
That actually happened to me once, and then I was still in high school. I had to then go meet my mom at a PTA meeting, and guess who was there with her two children?
Oh boy.
That was great. I forgot that actually happened.
But that would be, I mean, so awkward, and at the same time, like, yep, can't run away from this one.
Oh, my mom loves those conversations too, like telling people
Putting the
off.
screws to people. Yeah.
She's really good at it too.
So when it comes to relationships in particular, especially in the, you know, physical aspects of relationships, because inevitably any type of romantic relationship, you're going to get to a point. I assume that you've already addressed most, if not all, the issues before you reach that point.
Yeah.
I mean, you would probably, you know, you're getting hot and heavy and you're suddenly like, okay, wait a second, there's something I have to tell you. And, you know, have you ever had that situation happen?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, where especially after it was in 2013, I got T-boned by a pickup truck. My body had shifted and moved in certain ways that hadn't been the way my body was before. So, just to be frank, like intercourse was very different. It was an adjustment. And I do kind of tie that into my disability because I don't know if someone without a brittle bone disease would have been injured as bad.
Yeah.
Just to kind of tie that in. It was different. It was a conversation that as an adult, my body had changed. I wasn't sure how that was going to, honestly, it did for like a year. Like I didn't know how to really be intimate with somebody. It really took a while for me to kind of like figure out my own body and then
all
be
over
able
again.
to, and then be able to share that with someone. It was a journey. Even before then, though, like as a kid, to kind of go back to like my roots of when I was in a wheelchair, like I really didn't know what my future had in store. Even before being a part of the research program, I could have been in a wheelchair for the rest of my life if it wasn't for that program, which would have been doable. But again, your body strengthens as you're able to walk and whatnot. So you're kind of sitting there wondering as a kid, like you watch these movies, which are super unrealistic anyways. But you have these movies where you think this is what you're supposed to look like. This is how your body moves.
There's no American Pie movie or like, dumb, stupid sex comedy, which is frankly where teenagers are learning about sex as often as not.
None of them are accurately portraying the scene.
I mean, that's true, but at least most folks can generally see some version of themselves. They look at, the hot actor who's pretending to be a dork, and they can at least think like, I could be something like that. It could happen.
Yeah.
And that illusion doesn't exist in the same way.
No, and to even break it even further, it's like you have a variety of bodies, but then also this whole other sector of people with people that are disabled with their own version of their bodies. That this spectrum just keeps growing, and those people are often not represented in shows or films, especially in sex scenes. And then to bring in a whole other dynamic of queerness. It's like you really don't see that whole combination. So when it came to sex and relationships and starting to become that age where I could explore it, as a kid, I was like, I just won't do it. It's like it could be that simple. Like I'm just not going to do any of it.
Just opt out of the whole idea.
Yeah.
No, it
There's
makes a
no
certain kind of sense.
manual, there's no roadmap. Then okay, fine, I'm not even gonna try.
Yeah, but then I grew up and I was like, I have
Life
all these feelings.
finds a way.
Always.
Yeah, and I would say that as my body changed and as I got the confidence and just comfortable with it, I was able to have conversations with people like, depending on what we were doing, it was like, I have a brittle bone disease, like we can't do this, or if you do this, be careful, pressure or strength even. If you grab me, I'm not going to break, but there's,
Still,
Very real concerns,
don't go
yeah.
twisting my arm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's definitely
Or even like all your body weight even, like that may not be, like that would
Best
probably
idea.
make me then go out of this sexy moment to, oh, don't break me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like little things like that can be just the slightest thing to where you're also trying to keep your mindset in this like sexy, hot, heated moment where you're trying not to like overthink the situation and you don't want
Constantly
them
worried
to
about
overthink.
safety.
Yeah.
And
But that takes practice, just like anything else.
Yeah, well, I mean, with the subject of practice, I guess I just wonder about the exhaustion factor. I mean, whether it is frustrating to be constantly talking to children or explaining yourself to, passerby or even in more intimate relationships, to be constantly having to unpack these things and roll that out. Just how you, I guess, maintain stamina or maybe a cheeriness about the whole ordeal of having to discuss yourself that way.
I mean, that could also be, something with a variety of different things.
Sure.
A lot of people question or just kind of blatantly say inappropriate things or react inappropriately or dramatically, and you're just like, was that necessary?
The Southern Belle of, oh my.
And I'm from Arkansas, so yes.
You heard
You've
it. You
seen-
done heard it all.
Oh, yes. I would have to honestly say, like, once you're born with it, you don't know anything else. So when it comes down to it, especially with children, honestly, with children, I don't mind. Like, as a child, you are curious about everything. I would much rather want a parent to encourage their child. Like, let's ask questions. Let's, like, figure out why rather than just assume. Because honestly, when people assume, they're often wrong. Especially if you're assuming and categorizing, like, disabled people as, like, a whole umbrella, because that's obviously, like, not the case. Just we have our own, like, experiences. We're all individually very different. A lot of disabilities and diagnoses are very different and very complex. A lot of the people that have osteogenesis imperfecta, like I personally, have not seen a lot of people that even look like me, even within that own, like, realm of people, which is a whole other topic. But just to kind of paint you a picture of how diverse people are. So I personally would want people to ask questions, have similar conversations like we're having now. I mean, there's so much information. I mean, I even research things on a daily basis about my own disability, just because of the amount of research and information that is constantly being updated. I don't think people would pull this brittle bone disease out of a hat and be like, yeah, I'm going to read up on this today for no reason.
And become experts on everything.
But I think there is a large amount of information out there on, how to ask people maybe what's going on with you rather than blatantly going, oh, what's so concerning? Like, oh, I just am finding this out now. Are you okay? I'm fine.
This
I've
is
seen
the
you
way I have
for
been
months, and this is the first time you've noticed, and I'm fine.
Or the a little backstory on me. I have had spinal surgery, and there was a time in my life where I was actually paralyzed from the waist down on the left side. And so it was while I was in my teens, so I was very, very headstrong and very, like, oh, nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to, So the one thing I noticed a lot while I was, literally dragging my foot behind me all the time was the staring. Like the staring and no one coming up with just the courage to just ask.
Or say hi.
Or just say, just the constant, like, behind that, like, we can tell there's something going on here. We don't know what it is. We don't want to ask, and we don't want to intrude on anything, but we're going to keep staring. That, I imagine, you've probably felt too.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I don't mean to be dramatic, but yes. I mean, it's even my closest friends, like, there'll be this day where it clicks and they're like, wait a minute, people aren't staring because, like, we're cute. Like, it'll be this whole, like, wait a minute.
Oh, you
I mean,
sweet
sometimes
summer
I think,
child.
What?
Oh, like your friends, you just have you sweet summer child.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, like, so interesting where my friends, like, where it clicks, and I'm like, well, first of all, I've thought that too, and then someone, like, comes and hits on me, and I'm like, okay. But there's the list of reasons why people are looking, I will give people the benefit of the doubt. It could be a variety of reasons, but I will agree with you. The majority of the time, they're like, what is wrong with them? What's going on? I've had people straight up come and ask me, or they'll be like, oh, you have blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no.
Like random people at a bar or something?
Oh, yeah.
Just coming up?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, there's definitely a little bit of like threading the needle between those two extremes.
Be like,
Yes.
let me play Dr. House for a moment and just guess.
Or
Pin the tail.
a whole other part of that, too, is like the whole people fetishizing.
Yeah.
I've had people come up and be like, ooh, you're real tiny. And I'm like, and what's your name?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's...
Could lead with something a little smoother.
Yeah, I mean, it can be very strange depending on, like, if you're with your family or friends or just, you know, it's off-putting.
Whatever the situation.
Yeah, just having people kind of ogle you for either maybe good or bad reasons, but it's just, like, uncomfortable. You want to be able to go out without people staring.
Yeah, I mean, even that so-called positive racism, you know, when we make assumptions that Asians are great at math or something
yeah.
ridiculous like that, has that really negative effect.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the term is, but like the exception or so. Yeah, I would say I've actually gotten some of that just because I am able to walk and I do ride my bike. People are like, wow, you know, you've gone through so much, you can do this. And I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't belittle the experiences or what I've gone through. And, you know, I would say probably similar to...
Like, you're kind of expected to be a superhero.
Yeah, and
just
it's
because
like-
you've survived so much and all
I can
of
have bad days too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think that's real. And I think, honestly, I could even be more transparent in my own life about my bad days versus my good days, because I think a lot of people do assume, like, oh, you're not in pain, like, you're laughing and you're out of the house. And it's like, yeah, but I also, like, took 3 ibuprofens and I'm sitting down for a reason.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like the need to keep on that you know, trooper face?
I would say yes. That's also, like, how I was brought up. Like, it could always be worse.
Right.
And to be fair, it could.
Yeah.
I grew up in and out of Shriners Hospital, where I saw children younger than me, my same age, and really severe surgical situations. And oftentimes we shared rooms with people. So that person would be like my roommate for our hospital stay. I watched people with halos in their heads where it's, you know, it's like the screws are in their skull to straighten out their spine and neck. And I mean, I had a halo on my leg and that was painful. So I can't even imagine, you know, some of the children that I saw with like literally 10 pounds of weight
To keep
on this,
To adjust
yeah,
their spine.
contraption.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it could be worse. But again, that doesn't belittle anyone's experience, just
Yeah.
to kind of point that out.
Yeah, I can imagine that sort of survivor's guilt, if you will. You know,
Yeah.
that experience of knowing that other people do have it worse. But yeah, you've had this incredible experience, and I wonder if that makes it difficult, I guess, to relate to somebody who is able-bodied or who hasn't gone through a lot of those same things.
Absolutely. I'm not going to lie, when some able-bodied people start to complain about pain, I completely tone them out.
Sure.
Be like, you have no idea.
Well, especially when they've, like, told the story 3 times and, you know, they're, like, really wanting that sympathy, which, like, I probably have already given it to you, and I don't know. It's probably something I could practice on, like, having a little bit more patience, but it does happen a lot, and I think
Yeah.
people just forget, and I'm over here, like, you have no idea, like, what some people are going through on a day in and day out. So, yeah,
Well, just as an adult, you know, I imagine when people talk about their high school experience or, you know, going to school dances or playing, you know, high school volleyball or any of those kinds of things, whether that, you know, makes you feel like you stand out in an awkward way or if that creates any tension when you're getting to know somebody, when you're flirting or what have you.
it's a good question. I, in high school, was actually did fairly well as far as like staying plugged in. I had a really good group of friends. I also like knew them all in kindergarten and like graduated
You were
high
able
school.
to
Yeah,
go
it was.
through with that same cohort.
I gotta say, I was very lucky to have that. I think that definitely made my social life growing up a lot easier. As far as actually, I forgot the question. What was it?
Just whether you ever feel kind of alienated not having some of
yeah.
those like cornerstone or experiences that a lot of folks tend to.
Yes. That's what I was going to say. In high school, not so much because I was able to stay plugged in. As far as an adult, especially living in Austin, it's taken a minute.
Yeah.
Because of my experiences in high school, I think I've been able to kind of like rethink those things and figure out how to kind of rework those strategies in my adulthood as far as like making friendships as an adult, because that's always challenging anyways. And I actually, a couple of friends and I, we started kind of like a community kickball game, which I know it's kind of interesting considering I have a brittle bone disease. You are right, I am not out there kicking a ball. However, I have decided to be the all-time pitcher. So therefore, I'm not running. I'm, right in the middle of the field. I can still see everybody, feel like I'm in the game, so to speak. Although once that ball is kicked, you will not see me trying to catch it.
Duck and cover.
Yeah, I usually just have a nice beverage, and I kind of wait and watch the game until someone throws the ball back at me. It's worked out really well. We've been doing this for like 5 years now. But that's a good example to just kind of be like, hey, like, I do actually have quite a bit of able-bodied friends, so this is something where I can watch them be goofy and have fun, but I'm also involved, but also, like, not at risk of getting hurt.
Yeah.
But we're outside getting that vitamin D.
Which is, of course, super important.
Yes.
No, I think that's a really good thing for people to remember, is that just because you may not be able-bodied doesn't mean that you can't still be in situations with friends. You can still be involved in certain activities. It might not be in the exact same way everyone else is, but you can still, I guess, maybe put aside a bit of that hesitance that you may have and say, no, I can still be a part of this world.
Absolutely. And, it's not the same thing, but my friend recently injured themselves, and we made accommodations at the game. Like, we make accommodations for myself, we make accommodations for anyone that's injured, or if they're not able to run, like, we have a pretty good community idea of like what we're supposed to do. Like, people step up when they're supposed to. I think this group has definitely grasped that idea, and has also been able to play that out in a way that I felt confident in talking about it.
Well, I guess what strikes me about that whole experience is just the fact that you had to, in many ways, I imagine, create that space for yourself and sort of make room. And I guess I just picture, viewers sitting at home that maybe have really limited mobility, that really have a lack of access to these different things. And it just makes me feel a little bit exhausted on their behalf of how much of a challenge that might be, even on the good days, to get out and to go and to do and to be, when it is, frankly, I have a hard time getting out and playing kickball with my friends or
Get
going
that
to the park.
motivation.
And so I think that is, it's impressive on the one hand, but I also wonder what things we can be doing to, I guess, lower that barrier to access for folks in general.
Absolutely. And I think, to kind of just tie in the whole conversation, you made a really good point about how people kind of stare. Stop staring.
Okay, that's a good place to start.
There are so many different people out in the world, and when people can literally just focus on what they're doing, the person who just walked in probably is not going to have a huge effect on what is happening, especially if you're at like a coffee shop or a restaurant. But anywho, I would say that is a good place to start.
Quit making them feel like the other.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as kind of what you said to creating that, I mean, if you're in a position to create space or an opportunity for someone with a disability, like I can give a great example, and I still remember it. It's been almost 20 years, and my PE teacher, Coach Miss Logan, at Holcomb Elementary School in Fayetteville, Arkansas, if anyone's out there.
Woo Pig Suey.
Yes, that's funny. My mom and her had many conversations, but she went and went to the budget, whoever approved budget, and they got a bunch of scooters, like those little sit down. I don't know what.
Like the little
scooters.
square board things?
You can actually like put trash cans on them. And,
Oh, okay.
little-
Yeah, they're like squares with like 4 wheels on them,
like
and you
it
just
might have a handle or something.
yeah.
So she got, I don't know how many ever of those, and broke off the long part of the hockey stick and taped made little handles at the end of the hockey sticks. And then we played hockey on the scooters, so therefore I could play because the hockey, I was the goalie in my wheelchair for hockey, and that just like wasn't working out. I didn't feel like I could really move.
participate or
So we came back in the next day, and she like had reinvented the game for me to be able to participate, and it changed my life. I went home and like I had some little guy friends in grade school, and I was like, this is how we play football now. This is how we play soccer now. And it was like my knees were so banged up and our hands were banged up, but like we didn't care because we were playing together, and you know, it didn't matter. But I remember that day totally transforming. I can still do this stuff, I just do it differently. And when I was able to see like my whole class adjust to that, I was like, oh, we can do this. Like, we can apply this to other things.
Yeah, you don't have to completely
kind of-
break the wheel. I think that's such a common fear among folks, that we have to completely reinvent our culture in order to make accommodations. And that's not really the reality. There are so many opportunities to make small changes to just increase people's access.
Absolutely. And if you're a business owner, if you manage a store, you know, whatever you're able to do, like if you're able to take a look at your life and go, what are the things that I have control over to make things more accessible for people? I mean, that's where I think every individual should start, if that's something that you're really focused on.
Yeah, well, I do want to take a quick moment just to remind everybody that we do have lines open, and we'd love to hear from you. The number's right there on your screen.
512-686-0279.
Yeah, you've got it memorized. You can actually make that work. I'm still working on the damn email address.
Yes.
But we'd love to hear your questions, whether they're about this topic, whether you've got anything you'd like to ask Lex about, or anything else that might be on your mind. So, yeah, I'd love to get back to it, but we're looking forward to hearing from you.
So, did you have any other questions? I did have one.
Yeah.
When it comes to relationships, because this is secular sexuality.
Yes.
How do you usually just have one conversation, or is it a continuous dialogue of, I mean, I imagine it would need to be more of a continuous dialogue to make sure that, you know, there's the installment episode of the conversation, and then all the follow-ups.
Absolutely. And I'm happy to elaborate on this, because it actually wasn't until I was in a committed relationship that I kind of realized like what I was doing when I was dating. I was really good at like going on a bunch of first dates, even a couple second dates, but generally myself or the other person, it was just a really quick like, we're either friends, or there might have been a few situations where they were like, oh, let's go on another date, or like keep hanging out, and I would be able to have already kind of picked up on the fact that this person doesn't actually see me like for the whole piece.
Felt
Might be
very
like
desexualized in those situations where you get, I don't want to, I hate the term friend zoned, but people begin to see you less likely as like a romantic or sexual partner.
yes. I mean, there are situations where I think I know I have had to be careful to make sure that this person didn't see me as someone who like needed an able-bodied person,
Right.
Or
Didn't need
if I
to be the
needed
savior
like
complex.
just that is not how I roll. Like, I'm a fairly independent person. So that wasn't something that I was looking for. But at the same time, I had to be realistic with myself and my partner, whoever that was in the moment. But it was very realistic that I had good days and bad days. So when those bad days came around, it was fully understood, like, this is what's happening. There's no like, oh, what's wrong? Can I, like, it's, you already know it's a bad day. Let's keep, like, the day keeps moving. I'm just going to be a little slower.
Yeah.
Or I might need you to get up and do a couple things for me or cook that night, whatever it may be, because my leg's hurting and I can't even stand on it. Or sometimes the inflammation gets so bad. But it's continuous, because those good and bad days come and go. I do not know when those days come. And unfortunately, it happens a lot at night. So I wake up and I can be in excruciating pain to where when I reach over to my partner, I'm like, hey, I need you right now. It's happening. So.
I will say we actually do have a call. If you guys would like to take a call.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. We have the dangers of notebooks. Nikki on the line. Nikki, hey, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are y'all?
Doing pretty good, I think. What can we talk to you about today?
Well, I wanted to talk to y'all about kind of an interesting conversation I had with a coworker, and it's about my daughter.
Okay.
Well, our children, actually. My daughter, 10 years old, had a crush on her son, who's 10 or 11. And, she was trying to figure a way to tell him, and she wrote him a note. He was very, cute and innocent and everything. And he was trying to find a way to tell her he doesn't like her like that. And I was talking with their mom, with his mom about it, and she said that her rule is that her kids aren't allowed to date until they're ready to get married. And because the only reason to date is because you're looking for a partner. You're looking to get married.
The I kiss dating goodbye model of relationships.
I just thought it was the weirdest thing because, I was talking with other coworkers later, and I told them that there is no way I want her to do that. I got married at 18 and now divorced. And I kind of want her to go out and explore life a little bit.
Yeah.
And, it was just a really weird thing for her to say. Well, she has 12 children, so
you know where her mind has been
with all of her kids. Right? But no, I just wanted to hear y'all's opinion on that. And like I said, I told my daughter that, granted, she's 10, so the conversations are geared towards a 10-year-old.
Sure.
Basically, I want her to go out and experience life. I want her to date and have relationships and, just kind of do her thing before marriage, basically.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with that. And apparently all my friends seem to think that's weird. But yeah, I just wanted to get y'all's take on this interesting
Sure. Thing. Yeah, I can say I very much grew up under that regime, and it did not work out well for me in a lot of ways. But even underlying all of that, there's this idea that a relationship is only, quote unquote, successful if it is monogamous until death, right? That you meet somebody, you date them, you fall in love with them, you get married, you move in together, you have kids, and then one of you dies, and that is the only definition of a successful relationship. And that's bullshit. I have had so many wonderful experiences with people that I don't speak to anymore. Maybe we, had a bad breakup, or maybe not. Maybe we just sort of drifted apart. But I would never want to give up those memories or those experiences. And yeah, you're talking about wanting your daughter to go out and live her life. And I say, yeah, life involves a lot of things, including love, including sex, including dating, including good dates and bad dates and
including
dumb stories.
Love and loss.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, how can you really know if you love someone unless you've loved someone and lost them?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and let's be real, like, as we get older, like, your daughter and that the other kid, they're going to make their own decisions when it comes down to it. They're going to grow up and they're going to figure out if they want to or if they don't want to. I mean, I know I definitely, like, explored, and I think the children after us are going to, too.
Yeah, and how is she even? I know she's 10, and I don't mean to be getting too far ahead of things, but if she doesn't have an opportunity to date boys, to date girls, to date other types of people, and have these different experiences, how is she going to know who she wants to, quote, settle down with?
If she wants to at all.
Yeah, if that even is her direction.
I completely agree. Yeah. And I completely agree with that. And like I said, I was talking with some other friends, and I was saying which they thought was the weirdest thing, I want her to go out and have sex with people.
Yeah.
Good
sex, bad sex.
Mediocre sex.
I want her to be safe. And I told them I don't think it's weird to talk about it. I don't want my daughter to think it's weird to talk about sex with me. If anything, I would rather her ask me than her friend.
Yeah, or the internet, or yeah.
Yeah, and one of my friends said, it's supposed to be weird to talk to your mom about it.
You only make it weird.
Why?
It's weird if you make it weird.
Yeah. If you've already...
Exactly. I'm trying to normalize, I don't want it to be weird. I want it to be normal. I want her to be able to ask me about things. So,
yeah, it's like this weird version of the naturalistic fallacy, right? This idea that because something happens in nature that it is ideal or what we're hoping for. Or in this case, the fact that it happens that way in our culture all the time. Where,
right, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, that because talking about sex with your parents was weird, that's the way it should be. That's the way it ought to be for everybody. And God, no. Talk to anybody who has a good conversation, a good relationship with their parents, and ask them if they regret it or if that's somehow causing them harm in their lives. And I don't think you'll find anybody like that.
Well, and I would like to also say that, it strikes me that those people who find it find it awkward to talk to their parents about sex or relationships, those people tend to have trouble talking about sex and relationships with anyone, which I find to be very unhealthy.
And can really put somebody in a situation to be abused and not know it, to put somebody in a very vulnerable place because they don't have other people around them that are giving them that objectivity because they're cloistered away from those folks.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of what I had. You don't really talk about it. And I married the first boy I kissed, and I'm now divorced and trying to learn the whole dating thing. I don't know how well I'm doing, but, I'll figure it out. And I don't want her to go through that. I want her to have all the good and bad experiences now so that later on she can look back and go, well, that was stupid.
Yeah.
I made a good friend, or I learned a new lesson or something. And I want her to be able to come up to me and say, I screwed up, or I did good, or, I don't want any details still, but I want her to be comfortable, talking to me about it, both her and my daughter, or my son. I don't know if it'll be different with him because he's a boy, but I still don't want it to be weird for him either. So.
Well, in that conversation, including consent is very important. I mean, consent is not only something that you need to talk about when it comes to sex and relationships, but also friendships, workplace. That conversation is definitely needs to be included in that, just to put a little bug in your ear. But then also I want to add the conversations that you have with your children, especially if your children are involved with other people that are like the family that you gave an example earlier. I can probably I feel confident guaranteeing that those children are going to come to your kids with questions. And
more than likely.
I mean, my parents didn't really talk a ton, but I had like 20 books on all kinds of stuff. And I had very curious friends that were like, I've never even seen this stuff. I didn't know we were going to get hair on our body. I mean, I could go on, but those conversations are very important, and I would definitely encourage you to have those.
And just piggybacking.
I'm very open with my children. So, and I try to be as open as possible so that none of it's weird. And I mean, they're still kids, so they hear something in school, so of course they giggle. But I mean,
honestly, I still can't say the word Uranus without laughing a little bit. So that's healthy and normal and developmentally appropriate. But
that's both of my kids. Yeah.
And later, if you want to watch this video back when he said that, I just kind of just chuckled and shook my head a little bit.
Right? It's a naturally funny word.
It really is. But yeah, that's what I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, I think we're probably all in agreement that you are definitely on the writer side of this.
Yeah, there's so much more to dating and relationships and sex and romance and all of these components than just marriage. You know, that's such a small part of life. I mean, it's an important part for a lot of people, but human beings are more than just their disability, more than just their orientation or their marital status. There's a lot of life to be lived. So it sounds like you're on track.
I'm trying. We'll see what happens when she's older.
But
okay, yeah. It was awesome talking to you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good luck to you. Thanks for calling in.
And hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Thanks. You will. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, people who want to, like, using your word, cloister their children away and have this idea that when you go into the world of dating, that the end goal should always be marriage, right? Like, that is the golden cup or something that you're going to win.
Everything else is just working towards it.
Toward that goal,
if you date too much without achieving it, then there's something broken about you. Yeah. That's very much, I referenced I Kissed Dating Goodbye, which was a book that was just everywhere when I was growing up. My parents shoved it down my throat. All of my friends had read it, and it was just so prevalent in the culture there. And I found out a few years ago that the writer basically regretted and recanted everything about it. And I kind of brought that up for discussion among some friends, and they were so uncomfortable by the fact that I was like, look, never mind the fact that some idiot wrote a book. Lots of idiots write lots of stupid books. It's fine. But what about the architecture and the culture and everything that went into it that just accepted these philosophies that were completely divorced from any outcome data research, any thoughtful consideration, any anthropological studies of different cultures? It was basically just, this makes sense, so we should do it. And that's a world as a skeptic that I become increasingly frustrated with, where because a certain philosophy resonates, that we don't examine it, that we aren't looking at it or really considering what the implications might be.
And not just in the realm of dating, but also in, just every other facet of life and social dynamics that is the case.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was just going to say, did you have another question for Lex over here?
Kind of jumping back into things, my mother is disabled, and growing up in the rural conservative Christian South, it was very much sort of put to her that was in many ways her fault. Whether that she had caused her injuries or the fact that she couldn't heal, the fact that she couldn't get better, was because she didn't have enough faith or she wasn't making the right steps. And I guess I'm very curious if you've ever felt that sort of like moral shame because of your experiences.
So I don't think I could give you an example of me personally being shamed for my brittle bone disease. However, I can say that my mom, I've watched people like shame my mom. My mother was very young when she had me, and she was also not married. So of course they were forced they were forced to get married, and didn't even last a year, which don't blame them. But people, like I had a third grade teacher go, oh, did you like look straight at my mom and go, oh, did you just not drink enough milk during your pregnancy? And I think that might have been the first time like I watched my mom just like go full
Dismantle somebody.
Yeah, like I think we went straight to the principal's office. Like I don't even think it was a it was a blur, because I was like, oh, like I think I tried to wheel away. I was in a wheelchair. I was like, get me out of here. But no, I don't think I actually have. I did grow up in the church, Methodist church, if that makes a difference. I
the
think it
softer
kind
of
of did.
the southern denominations.
I went to a few Baptist and Catholic churches as well, and I think
Anybody ever try to lay hands on you and heal you?
yep. One of the most uncomfortable things I've ever been a part of.
Yeah, I absolutely.
I wasn't
believe
even a
that.
part of it, but I was there. Like it was very disturbing.
Yeah.
Because that is kind of like a, all these things you've been doing, all these surgeries or these corrective surgeries you had just doesn't quite do it. So let's put our hands on you and
Sprinkle in a little God.
I mean, I was like, it was appalling. You know, it's like I've been born with this. Again, kind of going back to like, there's no cure. So please stop trying to pull one out of thin air.
Yeah.
There's like actually people working really hard on trying to improve people like me's quality of life. So yeah, I mean, it's that has been that was I forgot about that. But no one's verbally like said anything to me. They've said it to my mom. And I think people just assume, like, they were young, so...
Must be some sort of punishment for being young.
Yeah, I mean...
The other side of that, in addition to just the asinine idea of it all, is that your very existence is somehow a affliction. That it was a punishment that your mother deserved. So never minding whether or not she deserved to be punished, just that label being placed on you.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, when that conversation happened with my third grade teacher, and I actually had her in fourth grade too.
Awesome.
So it was a long-term relationship. But it was a really interesting time, just considering... I wasn't too young to remember, but I wasn't quite old enough to really say anything. That particular teacher had a lot of questions, a lot of naive questions, but I think that was probably the first time in my life where my mom's been like, hey, you're gonna get stuff like this, and it's okay to be mad, it's okay to have feelings, it's okay to even make them feel bad for it. Because at the end of the day, like, it's people's responsibility to do their own education. And considering this person was like part of public school system, you know, that's like a whole other conversation about training and like giving
Educating the educators.
enough money for for teachers to be able to do the trainings and be able to make sure they know how to like work with their children that are in their classroom, because we all know everyone's different. And I don't even think like as an adult I've had questions. Granted, I also just like don't put up with that. Like if someone rubs me the wrong way or like asks some really ridiculous question, like from the get-go, like I probably am not gonna try to like hang out with that person or like be their friend or you know, I mean, I'll be nice to them.
Yeah,
but
it's exclusionary criteria for investing in a
An
conversation.
actual like relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say like I'm a fairly friendly person, so as far as like picking up a conversation with someone else, I feel comfortable going to talk. You know, if that's the case, like at a bar or an event, it's like, you will go find someone else. Bye.
Yeah. And so, with all of that being said, because I know I want to keep bring it back to relationships, and also being the Atheist Community of Austin, the religious aspect, where you said you were raised in the church. Do you feel that you got any negative treatment in the church, and completely apart from and separate from whether people would say things, you know, about it being, you know, your fault or punishment or anything? But did you ever receive any treatment from others in your church that was maybe less than stellar?
Absolutely. I think you could even go as far as to if someone has a party at the ice skating rink and they invite me, knowing that I can't do it, and either people have like expected me to sit on the sideline in my wheelchair and just like watch. Like, that will be fun. No, thank you.
Would that be good for you? Would you like that?
Yeah, no, thank you. I have other things I can be doing with my time.
Yeah.
I still kind of get that. People will ask me to do things, or I have gone rock climbing, but it's not something that I think is safe for me to do frequently. Even bike riding is risky, but it's still safer.
There's a trade-off there?
Yeah, there's, you know, it's a little bit safer than like any other extreme, but it keeps me still moving.
Yeah.
It's easier than walking even for me.
Good on your knees and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, so to kind of just put that into perspective, like people think of like my riding my bike means I can go do stuff, and I'm like, nope. Like, when have you ever seen me run? Or like jump off things or jump, period.
Why don't you come do this 5K with us? Let's have some fun, and then we'll go, you know, rock climbing and hike a trail.
Yeah, it's like, no. And that, you know, that's something that hiking is, it's one of those things that I like doing. I like nature. I like going on walks, but like I walk slow. So, online dating, you know, people are always like posting their pictures of like, I went hiking, but you know, that's like the only time they've gone
ever
hiking.
went.
Right. Yeah.
So when I would see those photos and people would, you know, DM me or whatever, it was just like, oh, like how often do you go hiking? Like, what, you know, is it backpacking? You do have to kind of have those conversations. But
when you say you like the outdoors, do you really like the outdoors?
And you know, they're like, no, like glamping, and you're like, okay.
That's in my wheelhouse. Yeah.
Yeah. And also just like the wheelhouse of like what I like to do and able to do. It's sometimes more accessible. Sometimes it's not. You definitely have to have those conversations. Like if you're going places. Or if it's like a date idea. Like I had someone offer like, let's go to the trampoline park, and I'm like,
What part of that?
are you trying to break a bone?
Yeah.
And I do have kind of a little bit of empathy for people like the second after they ask that, because there's this moment of like, oh shit.
The realization.
Yeah, they're like, I messed up, and I'm like, it's okay, just don't forget.
Yeah.
You know, it's something that you do kind of have to keep in mind, especially if like you're going to be a part of my life.
When it's
friendship or relationship.
Yeah, and it's human for people to make those kinds of mistakes, but that doesn't change the fact that you are experiencing people making those mistakes over and over and over and over again. And I don't mean to harp on it, but to me, that's where I come from when I talk about just that feeling of exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I can't tell you how over the past 2 years I've stopped going out. Like, I used to love going out and meeting people, but then I am not sure exactly what it was, but there was this weird, like, 2 or 3 months where every time I went out, I was having these really interesting conflicts with people that, I mean, I had one person, like, loudly, as I walked past them, go, "Oh, I didn't know children were allowed in here." And I turned around and I mean, those were just some young college girls, and all the one of them, and then there was 3 of them. The 3 of them, like, got in front of her, like I was gonna do something, but I was apparently that pissed off, you know. But it's just like, what? So to kind of like bring my point is, people can sometimes be very aggravating, and it is very exhausting.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to touch on this earlier, so this is a good segue. Those experiences can also tie into people with disabilities and their mental health.
Yeah.
You know, and
A constant stream of microaggressions.
yes, and so not to say that people with disabilities always have mental health issues, but I do think that there's something to be said that when we talk about what our community can do to be better, is to just realize, like, the amount of not even stress, but just pressure that we put on individuals to either educate ourselves, you know, to feel like we're connected, or, ooh, we have a disabled friend or a black friend or a gay friend. It's like, okay, we're all more than just that label, but, you know, it's like, pay attention to it, but don't pay attention to it. Like, meet me in the middle
Like,
somewhere.
acknowledge it and move on.
Yeah, like, let's not stick on. Like, after I came out, my friend went, like, I kid you not, someone who would always be like, "Oh, this is my friend, they have osteogenesis imperfecta," and then I came out and they're like, "This is my lesbian friend." And I'm like,
Let's just
Cool.
switch the labels. This is great.
yeah.
How about
like,
I'm
this
your
is
friend
cool.
Lex? How does that sound?
I've known this person for like over 20 years, and I was just like, what is happening?
When did this become the only part of me that is important for people to know up front?
Yeah, it's pretty funny. She knows she does it, so which I don't care saying. I'm like, someone's going to find this and be like, "Oh, I know the one person you've known for 20 years.
Yeah, so I don't want to make it sound as if you went to school in Soviet Russia, but when we talk about Arkansas in the 90s, like I'm thinking like West Memphis 3, I'm thinking about like the last season of True Detective. And
You know,
right?
I actually haven't seen that show, and it's filmed in my hometown.
Yeah, I totally,
My friends
absolutely.
in it. Anyways.
Yeah. So, not an ideal circumstance in a lot of ways in terms of like education and, I mean, yeah. So that being said, I guess I'm curious a little bit about how you've seen things change and maybe sort of the direction that we're going in terms of like ADA compliance and other just lowering those barriers to access.
So something that I actually learned about the ADA was that the rules for buildings to be accessible, I did know this part, that it has to be after a certain year. Like, if a building is so old,
It can be like grandfathered in.
no, the rules essentially don't apply.
Right, yeah.
Like, so if it's oh, I see what you're saying. And then, but if it's a new building, like, the accessibility can be limited. I'm not, like, exactly sure, but I know that there are still people in this community who that organization just doesn't do anything for them, that they are still advocating a lot for themselves. Unfortunately, I'm not up to speed on those things.
Yeah, we didn't invite you here because you're a lawyer. But
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what your experience has been.
But no, with that being said, I experienced that a little bit. Probably wasn't until junior high until it was like a real issue. My grade school was actually pretty progressive for that area. I think it was also like one of the only elementary schools that like accepted people with different abilities, either like physical disabilities or forms of IDD, but also the state of Arkansas like would give schools that took like if you had more disabled children on your roster, then like you got X amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a little bit strategic, and I remember like my mom being a part of that because she was like a big PTA person, and always talking to the teachers and the principal. But to answer your question, in junior high, I had to like go outside, and in my wheelchair, I was in a wheelchair during those years. And in order for me to go eat in the cafeteria, I had to go all the way outside and around the building to go into the cafeteria.
So if it's raining or whatever, you're the only person who's getting wet. You're the one who's getting there late.
Yeah, so it was, I didn't have enough time to eat, you know, all of that stuff. And then once they got the elevator fixed, it was like a clear glass elevator that the entire cafeteria could see. So it was and it was loud. Like it was like from the 70s. It was just like they had to fix it once I came to the school. Like it hadn't been working in like 6 years kind of thing. It was just obnoxious because I would be in this like see-through cube pushing this button, and everyone's like, hi. And I'm like, here I am.
Yeah, I guess it's rather lucky that you grew up to be a bit extroverted. I'm sure that pulled it out of you a little bit, but
yeah, my mom was very encouraging.
Yeah,
very like, you don't want to be that person that doesn't have any friends. And I mean, mothers put words, you know, ideas in your head, anyways. But that was definitely something from a very young age. My mom was like, you know, want friends, you want to be invited to things. My mom was very much about like popularity. If that just, yeah. So I was very much encouraged to have friends. My mom would drive me and my friends around so I could hang out, but also like have someone to get my wheelchair in and out of the car, stuff like that. And parents loved that. Oh, Chrissy's going to be there? You guys can go. And then it's like we have a car full of people. But yeah.
So we actually do have one more caller to finish up the evening, I think, if everybody's
so
good with
let's
that.
jump on with Aaron.
All right. Aaron, you are on the air.
Hey, girl, what's up?
Nothing much. How are you doing?
Pretty good. I had two things to talk about. One was a question for Lex, and then the other was a statement / I don't know, maybe commentary for you and Christy. My question for Lex is, you know, just dealing with my own personal, I'm transgender, just dealing with my own personal experience. I'm going to be 60 in about a year and a half. And so, you know, when I came out of the closet and whatever, there was no way I was coming out of the closet in the early 70s. That just wasn't happening.
Sure.
Okay. And so I've had I've had some negative experiences, which I'm not going to go into because that would take way too long. But I've had a lot of positive ones, especially from family and friends. But my question for Lex is almost, you know, when I heard Lex earlier talking about, you know, dealing with children's questions, you know, whatever. Sometimes I almost feel like I'm the cishet whisperer. Because I get, you know, I work in a very public position. I work for Big Blue Box Mart by another name, and I'm very out and open. And so I get a lot of people who, you know, a lot of times they genuinely, you know, they're just genuinely curious, and that's fine. But sometimes it is just so exhausting to deal with the same questions over and over and over and over and over again. And most of the time people do it with an open mind. They want information from someone who knows, who's there, not something you find on the internet, because, everything on the internet's true. But I just wanted to know if Lex had any sort of similar feeling about having to deal with disabilities in that way.
Absolutely. So I actually identify as non-binary. I sometimes can be a little bit more feminine, but mostly masculine, although my voice is very high. So I've had a lot of children actually walk up to me and be like, what are you? And sometimes I kind of have to ask some probing questions going, are you referring to like my hair, how I'm dressed, or how I walk? Because I kind of walk with this like waddle. Sometimes it's worse on my bad days. But like I'm also 4'6", so people are like, "Are you an adult or a kid?" When I do ask those probing questions, depending on kind of what's going on, essentially I just try to talk to the kid based on like where, like the setting, like if the parents around,
Right.
that's helpful. If it's super random and they're like alone, I might go like, "Where's your parent?" But really, I would just kind of note the fact that so like in a wheelchair, for example, children would walk up and be like, "What's wrong?" I would then just tell them, "Well, I have a brittle bone disease, and sometimes I use a wheelchair." Sometimes kids are like, "Okay, like you answered my question, bye." But sometimes they're also like, "Well, why some days?" And a lot of younger children love that why question. To some extent, it's hard to tell a child to go do like your own education.
Screw up. Yeah.
That's something I would definitely tell an adult. I have.
And I
I have made
get the.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Well, I get a lot of times, because I identify as female, I get and it's a little odd for me also because I'm 6'3". I'm not short.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times when I'm, I have the opposite of you as far as height goes. So a lot of times when I'm at work and I'm either bent over or like on my knees stocking a shelf or whatever, I get ma'amed a lot, which is nice. And then I stand up and turn around and they're like, "Holy shit, that's big." And I even had a guy come up to me and say, "Ma'am, can you show me where so and so, such and such is or whatever?" And I stand up and I turn around and he gets flustered and goes, "Well, whatever," and then goes on with his question. I've also had just recently had a customer come up to me, and of course we have to wear a name badge, and mine says Aaron, and I hear this Aaron, and I'm looking around because I don't recognize the voice. It doesn't sound like one of my coworkers. And I'm looking around, who the heck is calling me? And then it's this guy on the other side of my cart. I happen to be stocking like lettuce and whatever at the time. And he said, "I just wanted to let you know that I have a son who is trans, was born genetically female and identifies as male. And he looks up to you, and he's a little too shy to say anything, but he just wanted me to pass along that he looks up to you and he thinks it's a good thing, that you're out and open and whatever." And so that type of, it's very positive, that kind of stuff. But like I said, sometimes it can be just, and because as well as I do, the internet is full of lots of information. Sometimes it's not accurate. Sometimes it's hard to think or say go look on the internet, because you can look on the internet and find all kinds of bullshit on there.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
not well curated.
Well, when I say
and then the other, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, when I say like when people need to educate themselves, I don't necessarily mean the internet.
WebMD.
I mean.
Right.
Like, for example, like my brittle bone disease actually it's osteogenesis imperfecta.org. I mean, it has like its own thing, and most diagnoses will. I know that there's been a lot of work particularly like within the drag community, to try to get children to feel more comfortable with more queer bodies, which is great. But I think that's awesome that someone came up to you at your work and said that they looked up to you. That's pretty incredible. But I will say that sometimes those comments aren't as nice, especially when they're coming from children. It stings. I know I don't know if this is like the best advice, but I know that children don't know and are still learning. And unfortunately, like I would just say, in those moments where it's really hard to kind of swallow it, we do have to be mindful that these are children and they're curious and
I almost never get any sort of negative feedback from kids in any way, shape, or form.
Good.
You know, it's almost adults will walk by and they have the stare, as I call it, and the frown on their face, and I'm you're lucky I'm at work because I tend to be a little bit blunt at times. So the other thing I wanted to talk about real quick, because I know it's getting near the end of the show, was to Christy and Megan. And that was, again, not mentioning the name of my company, but, I like to call it Big Blue Boxmart. For the last 3 years now, they have included in their insurance therapy, medication / HRT, and surgery for transgender people. And so tomorrow will be my first appointment with my endo to get my prescription for hormones and whatever, They paid for, I had one therapy session. And sometimes, I've heard people say, it takes 2 or 3 sessions or whatever. But, when I went to them, I said, I have so many issues. I have a subscription. I have chronic depression and I'm bipolar and I have ADHD and whatever. But as far as being transgender, I'm out and open at work. I'm out and open with family and friends. I'm out and open on the internet. And so I got the letter, boom, right away. So I just wanted to let other people know out there, and that either in a similar situation to mine or coming into a similar situation to mine. I know it's a cliche sometimes, but it is actually truth that it is getting better, slowly but surely. And that when you have more and more bigger companies like that, recognizing that people are people and it is a positive to them. If nothing else, to the CYA syndrome, it's a positive to them to go, look, we're doing diversity in the workplace and whatever. It's far different than it was in the late 70s, early 80s. Even in the early 2000s, I was working at a local hospital, and they specifically changed the insurance at that time to bar transgender payments or anything to do with transgender, therapy or whatever, because of me, because that's when I first came out. So, it has come a long way, and I just want to let people know that it is getting better.
Yeah, and I very much believe that, and I'm always heartened to hear it. But you touched on something I think is super important, which is that a lot of it is covering your own ass. It is about liability, and it is about like legal compliance. And so while I do think that the culture is shifting, I think one of the ways that we continue to force and mandate that shift is through legislation, through our political apparatus. And so I just want to encourage everybody that even though things are headed in the right direction, and I sincerely believe that we need to continue driving that in the way that we vote, in the way that we fund our campaigns, and just the way we look at our politics.
The social and then
Absolutely.
into political pressure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I got to get going off the phone here because somebody's knocking at the door. But so I just wanted to let you guys know, and I love the show, and keep up the good work.
Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on the show, Lex.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, it may be an urban legend, but I've heard that in order to deal with his constant celebrity, Steve Martin actually had like business cards printed out that had answers to like the 10 most common questions he was sick of answering. And anytime he would meet somebody that would be all starry-eyed and have those questions, he would just sort of like hand it off. And I'm not necessarily recommending that for you, but I can only imagine the temptation for something like that.
Oh, it's definitely, like, I don't want to compare it to like a sales pitch, but it's definitely like a script.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
you definitely
your 10-second elevator pitch or
yeah,
whatever.
because people either it's like people's look or they flat out ask the questions. You're just like, yeah, here we go, and then you kind of sit through the, oh, wow,
You're so brave.
yeah, so impressive. Look at you now, and it is true. Like I have put in a lot of work to be able to go years without breaking a bone. Like that is something that I do celebrate. Also celebrating being able to walk without any kind of assistance. I mean, I one day will have to go back to those things. That's something that I'm fully aware of. As I get older, everybody's body deteriorates and you start to lose muscle mass, bone density. I have no idea, because the research is so new still, if the medication Fosamax is going to hold out for me long term.
What the long-term side effects might be, and all of these things.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really fascinating. I don't even think that they prescribe Fosamax to people with OI. OI is short for osteogenesis imperfecta. So I don't even think that they provide that medication to patients anymore, just because of the long-term effects it had on people with osteoporosis, kind of going back to the squaring of the bone, in that sense. So just to kind of tie it into, it's good to celebrate your success, but at the same time, when you're not really a part of the in and outs of it, it can, and not condescending, but kind of like where people are like kind of oohs and ahs and you're so impressive and or
Like health accomplished, like you're done,
or you're so blessed,
your journey's
or
finished, or
that thing. It's like, oh, okay. Like,
yeah, didn't put any of the work into it to get better or anything. There weren't any doctors. I'm just so blessed to be doing as well. Yeah.
And I think that's why I got so frustrated with the, we're praying for you.
Yeah, the thoughts and prayers.
How about make me dinner?
Yeah, seriously. I mean,
while I do my physical exercise.
Help with, fundraisers and different things, which I think is a really beautiful way that you've sort of channeled maybe some of that frustration into being an activist and being
Absolutely
active in the community in those ways.
Absolutely. I don't think I would be able to live like my days if I wasn't having these conversations. I don't think I would. I mean, I know that just existing and the world is doing my part, but I do feel very strongly about having these conversations, just because it is very intertwined. And if people don't think that, disabled people aren't a part of their lives, they're wrong. We're everywhere.
Even if you can't see it.
Yes. Yep. And that is a very important thing to say.
And I think that's actually a wonderful place to end that, because we are everywhere.
We are.
So, Christy, would you like to tell Lex how we like to end the show?
Yeah, well, basically, we just want to thank everybody for joining us and, of course, encourage them to keep the conversation going. The email address that I can't seem to say out loud is right there on your screen, sex@atheist-community.org.
Yes!
And we would love to hear from you and just kind of hear your thoughts about everything, and hear your questions and just, keep all of this going. And other than that, we appreciate you joining us, and we want to remind everybody.
This is the best part.
That, whether you are queer or non-binary, whether you are gay or straight, whether you are able-bodied or disabled, whether you're
cis or not.
Cis or genderqueer, whether you're from Arkansas or not. We just want to thank you for joining us and encourage you to go out there and give yourself a big ol' orgasm. Or better yet, give somebody else one.
Bye.